It's the Ringside Wranglers Wrestling Report with your host, Jack Jaw.
Welcome to your Ringside Wrangler Weekly Wrestling Report. I'm your host, Jack Jaw. If you have any questions for us as you watch our show, you can email us at ringsidewrangler@gmail.com. You can comment. You can subscribe on our YouTube channel. Weekly, we're going to be looking at wrestling news in the WWE, the AEW, NWA, Impact, and local, small, independent wrestling organizations. And we also will spotlight a weekly tidbit of information that you may or may not know. Going to the top of the news, in Raw. Last week I reported that Brock Lesnar had been somewhat in a hiatus after winning the title at the debut issue of Smackdown. Well, guess what? He's back. Paul Heyman brings him back, challenging the whole locker room. Nobody can beat Brock, to the point he's entering him number one in the Royal Rumble, which means he will have to defend and defeat 30 other wrestlers, becoming the Royal Rumble champion. I say no way he does it, but we'll have to see. The next match, Rey Mysterio comes out. He's trying to win his title back from Andrade. It doesn't go his way. Not only does it not go his way, but Andrade takes his mask. What an embarrassment. Moving on, the Viking Raiders. They go on to defend their title against the OC, as well as the Street Profits. The Viking Raiders hit them with a powerbomb. End of story. They keep their title. Out comes Becky Lynch. This is one tough chick. She's tired of talking. She calls out Osaka. Osaka comes out to confront her. And guess what? For her efforts, she gets laid out. Laid out to the point Becky Lynch just turns and leaves and goes to the back. Next match, you had Big Eric Rowan. He's getting a big push by squashing all of these jobbers that come out. Freaky thing, Eric Rowan shows him something in a box. It freaks out the jobber, and he just runs away. Eric Rowan with the win. Next up, you had AJ Styles fighting against Akira Tozawa. Don't know anything about this match, but I do know AJ's talking trash like he always does. He's not only using his own move with the Style/Robe Hug DDT, he's also using other wrestlers' moves. He's using the RKO. Guess what? He goes on to win. Next up, you had Lana coming out trying to continue on her marriage, of all things, to Bobby Lashley. You also have Liv Morgan in the mix. Don't know what's going on there. I look for Liv Morgan to partner up with Rusev. In the interim, you've got Rusev calling out Bobby, and next week you've got a match, Rusev and Bobby Lashley. The Bulgarian Brute is back. Next up, you had Charlotte Flair coming out. I'm not really sure who she's wrestling, but on the way to the ring, Sarah Logan confronts her and attacks her. Nothing even gets into the ring. They battle outside. Charlotte Flair gets ticked off, grabs a robe, and goes to the back. Next up, you had the No Way Jose guy. Don't know anything about him. He just seems like nothing more than a jobber, but he takes on Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre, I'm predicting, is getting ready to get a big push. We'll talk about that later. Oh, man? Are you saying, oh, man?
That one's going to be a great fight.
I know. I'm talking all man, too. Drew McIntyre easily lays out No Way Jose. He hits him with his Claymore kick, and guess what? Turns around just for good measure and hits him with another one. The next match, what a sleeper. Shelton Benjamin against Aleister Black, who's obviously getting his big push. Aleister Black takes him out. Black knee to the face of Shelton Benjamin. I'm not sure if Shelton's going to enjoy his time back. Then, in the main event, you had a big return. It's crazy that this has finally happened, but they're bringing back the Big Show. The crowd goes crazy. Big Show teams with Samoa Joe and Kevin Owens. Good to go against the AOP and Seth Rollins. Easy squash. Big Show, Samoa Joe, Kevin Owens, your winner. The show goes to black with them just standing over and celebrating.
Now, how long has it been since the
Big Show
came out?
Yeah, he's been gone for probably, it seems like a year. Time flies. The last he was on the show, he had lost a lot of weight. I wasn't sure the direction they were going, but he looks in great shape. Never understood why he has not held numerous titles for long periods of time. Crazy underuse of talent. Yeah, but guess what? He's back.
I agree with that, man.
Moving on to another WWE show, Smackdown. Their branded show on Friday Night Fox. This week's show started off with Miz TV, and look who his guest is, John Morrison. They're bringing him back. What we're saying, The band is back together. The Miz is back heel like he should be. And guess what? Morrison and him are feeding off each other. Miz goes on to fight Kofi. John Morrison interferes for Miz to get the win. That's crazy. That's your kind of dude, Mr. Producer Punk.
Yeah, man.
Producer Punk, you're like Miz.
Yeah, I hear you.
The next match, the Boss is supposed to fight Lacey Evans. Sasha, the Boss, supposed to come out. She no-shows. Bailey comes on the big Titantron, taunts Lacey. Lacey gets mad, goes to the back to fight her and confront her. Guess what happens? She gets laid out. What an embarrassment. I'm not sure what's going on with the Lacey, but they've turned her face. I think she's better heel. We'll see what happens. Not really sure what's going to go on there. That's a pretty good, interesting storyline going. The next match, you had Shinsuke Nakamura against Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman is another one. I don't understand why he has not held numerous titles. They're teasing, I guess, a title run by him beating, even after the interference of Sami and Cesaro. Braun Strowman still defeats Shinsuke Nakamura, but guess what? It was a no title match, so he can hold the belt up all he wants like that, but he's not the champ until it's a title match. He should be getting a title match soon and win it soon. Every time they put him in a title match, it just seems like for whatever reason he doesn't win. Crazy underuse of talent. He's a huge character, and guess what? At the end, you had Robert Roode return to his glorious return and celebrates as Corbin and Ziggler beat the Uso Penitentiary. And Roman Reigns, even with his help, they're still laid out at the end as the show goes to black. The NXT show, you have your champ. It's crazy the talent they have in the women's roster. They start the show off with a 6-woman tag match. You had Rhea Ripley, Toni Storm, and Candice McRae against Kaylee Ray, the UK Women's Champion, Io Shirai, Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, Toni Storm, Candice McRae. They win the match. In the process, Kaylee Ray, the UK Women's Champion, who's supposed to fight at this weekend's UK pay-per-view, she is injured, but she says she will be fighting this weekend. The next on the agenda for the NXT show, you had the Dusty Rhodes tag team classic match going on. You had the Imperium defeat Forgotten Sons. You had Austin Theory defeat Joaquin Wilde. You had the Undisputed Era, the tag champions in NXT, defeat Gallus by pinfall to advance to the semifinals of the Dusty Classic. Also on the NXT show, you had Johnny Gargano. He calls out Finn Balor. I'm not sure what Finn Balor is doing on NXT. Maybe they're trying to help the brand. He's a mainstreamer. He's an upper carder. He is on your Raw show. He's on your Smackdown show. And now he's back on NXT. Not sure what's going on there. In the next match, you had Mia Yim and Caden Carter. Yim wins that match. The flagship match at the end of the show, you had Keith Lee and Dominic Yakovic and Damian Priest versus Cameron Grimes. Best show of the night. Lots of acrobatics. Guess what? Lee defeats Djokovic, Priest, and Grimes, and he's your new number one contender for the North American Championship. Simply put, the Limitless One wins every match put for them. He looks to be getting a big NXT push. Moving on to AEW. Big news this week. The AEW has finally surpassed NXT show in rankings. There was rumored to be at one time the AEW show was going to move off of Wednesday night because they could not compete. But guess what? Not only did they compete, they beat them. This week, 947,000 viewers on AEW to 721,000 on NXT. Dynamite is moving up. Big push this week. You had the big story of Jon Moxley possibly joining the Inner Circle and Chris Jericho's team. Guess what? Even after giving him a car, giving him part ownership, he accepts to trick the crowd only to immediately turn and say, yeah, never mind, I'm not joining your Inner Circle. And he lays him out with a champagne bottle to the head. Next week, you've got Bash at the Beach, where Sammy Guevara and Jon Moxley will fight each other. You've got the MJF, the Butcher, and the Blade versus Diamond Dallas Page, who's back, and Dustin Rhodes and QT Marshall in the Bash at the Beach show, next week's AEW show. Moving on to the NWA, their weekly show on YouTube Power. Big push this week. You had your world champ, Nick Aldis and Camille, and the Wildcats out there challenging the old man, Ricky Morton from the Midnight Express, with Robert Gibson as his partner, challenging him to a match, only to find out after accepting that Nick Aldis is bringing into his team, are you ready, Big Papa Pump, Scott Steiner. He makes his NWA debut with the sirens going off. This ought to be interesting. Moving on to Impact Wrestling. Tomorrow is Impact Wrestling's pay-per-view, Hard to Kill, in the Bomb Factory in Dallas. I'm going to give you a rundown of the card with my prediction. Unbelievable. female wrestler Tessa Blanchard is fighting the men's champion Sami Callihan for the title as the main event. In your Impact Knockouts Championship, you've got Taya, John Morrison's wife, going against Lorden Grace and ODB. In the Impact X Division Championship, you've got Ace Austin against Trey. In the Impact World Tag Team Championship match, you've got The North versus Willie Mack and Rick Swann. And also in the matches, you've got Michael Elgin against Eddie Edwards. You've got Rob Van Dam and Brian Cage. You've got the Moose versus Rhino. You've got Madman Fulton against Ken Shamrock. Let's run down my predictions. I've got Teresa Blanchard beating Sami Callihan for the title. I've got Taya keeping her title, John Morrison's wife. I've got Austin beating Trey. I've got Swann and Mack taking the World Tag Team Champion. I've got Cage defeating Rob Van Dam. I've got Moose beating Rhino. And I've got Madman Fulton taking out Ken Shamrock. What does that tell you? These old timers that come back, they're just temporary faces for the company. They will not win any matches. Moving on to independent wrestling. We here at the Ringside Wrangler Wrestling Report wanted you to know that we are here to help you get your word and branding out for your wrestling organizations. Organizations like Wildcat, Wrestling 225, Full Impact Pro Wrestling, Ohio Valley Wrestling. Whoever you are, if you need your brand or your events or your wrestlers or your faces or your heels pushed, we can do it here at the Ringside Wrangler Wrestling Report. Moving on to your weekly spotlight. This week's spotlight is 5 2020 bold predictions. I've got Teresa Blanchard going to AEW. The only thing that will prevent this is exactly what's going on now. She may win the Impact Championship. If she does, she may stick around. Otherwise, I say she goes to AEW. I've got Drew McIntyre winning the Royal Rumble. He may, in fact, be the one that takes out Brock Lesnar, which would really give him a big push. Heel versus heel. You never know what goes on there. Who turns face? Drew McIntyre's better heel. I'm not really sure how he's going to do as a face, but if he is a face coming out of Royal Rumble, I say the push continues. Crazy prediction here. I've got CM Punk actually returning to the WWE to fight at WrestleMania. He will face Seth Rollins. In the AEW rankings, the boost came this week. I say the continued boost happens with Luke Harper joining AEW and becoming the leader of Dark Order. In the big number 5 prediction this year, I've got Undertaker taking on Sting in what will be their final matches. It may not happen at WrestleMania, but it will happen for sure by Saudi Arabia. And that's your show this week. Check out the Ringside Wrangler Wrestling Report next week. Look us up. Email us at ringsidewrangler@gmail.com. Look up our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, comment, whatever you want to do. Let us know what you want to talk about, what's interesting, who's your heel, who's your face. We're the Ringside Wrangler Wrestling Report. I'm Jack Jaw.